now beginning the hearing. Would you please have the accused brought into the courtroom? Be seated. First, I would like to be sure that the interpreters are all ready once the photographs have completed their work.
Les photographes.
Gentlemen, fine. You can withdraw now, please. Does the interpreting booth hear me? Do my colleagues hear me?
L'accusation m'entend.
Prosecutor here. And the defense.
Et enfin, est-ce que les accusés m'entendent?
Do the accused hear? In their own language.
Bien. Donc à présent, nous pouvons...
We can now start the hearing, which, as I would like to recall, is an initial appearance hearing. According to the International Criminal Tribunal's statute and rules of procedure, state that when accused, after having had their indictment confirmed by a judge and after having been arrested and brought to the tribunal, must go through a proceedings which is called the initial appearance. First, I will ask each of the accused to rise when his name is called and to state for the judges their name, first name, date and birth, and place of their birth, and the names of their attorneys. First, from left to right, Mr. Peroskopiak. Do you hear me? Please rise. Good morning. First, give us your name.
Allez-y. Voilà.
You have to turn your microphone on.
Là, je crois qu'on peut vous entendre et traduire. Alors vous...
We can hear you now. Please give us your name, your first name as well, where you live, the name of your attorney, and your date and place of birth.
My name is Peroskopiak. I was born on the 4th of June, 1943 in Vitez. My attorney is Mrs. Jadranka Sloković, glumac.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Šantić, who, according to the drawing that I have here, should be the next one. Please sit down now, Mr. Skopiak. Give me your name, Mr. Šantić, of course, your name, but the other information as well.
My name is Ivan Šantić. I was born on the 30th of July, 1940, in Zenica. My attorney is Mr. Ivan Kern.
Merci, asseyez-vous.
Thank you. Please be seated. The next person, who should be Mr. Čerkez, would you please rise? Turn your microphone on.
My name is Mario Čerkez. I was born on the 27th of March, 1959. My attorney is Mr. Ivan Kern.
Thank you. And last, Mr. KORDIĆ.
My name is Dario KORDIĆ. I was born on the 14th of December, 1960 in Sarajevo. I'm married. My wife is called Venera. I have 3 children, Vladimir, Maria, and Elizabeth. My attorney's name is Mrs. Jadranka Sloković Glumac.
Je me tournerai à présent.
I now turn, please be seated first. After having asked the registrar to call out the reference numbers for this case, this is what number now? This is case IT 9514/2 I. The prosecutor of the tribunal against Dario KORDIĆ, Mario Čerkez, Ivica Šantić, Peroskopiak, Zlatko Alavsovski, and Timur Blaškić. I would like to have the appearances for the prosecution, please.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors, and good morning, Counsel. My name is Mark Harmon. I will be appearing for the prosecutor this morning, and I will be assisted by Mr. Gregory Kehoe.
Merci.
Thank you. For the defense, would you introduce yourselves, please, and to recall which of the accused you are defending? Mrs. Slokovic, Glumac, would you please spell your name for us? In any case, pronounce it clearly. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. Good morning, Your Honors. My name is Jadranka Slokovic-Glumat, attorney, and I represent Mr. Pero Skopljak and Mr. Dario KORDIĆ. My name is Ivan Kern, attorney from Zagreb, Croatia, and I represent here Mr. Mario Čerkez and Mr. Ivan Šantić.
Mrs. Glumac, you did not indicate what bar you work with.
I'm an attorney from Zagreb and a member of the Croatian Bar Association.
Madame.
Mrs. Glumac and Mr. Kern, did you indicate your qualifications and credentials to the register as far as your membership in the bar is concerned, or do you do that afterwards?
We will be doing that in the next few days, as we didn't manage to collect all the necessary papers in time. Yes?
I didn't hear Mr. Kern's answer. Could we hear it again, please?
Has been handed in.
I suppose, Mr. Kern, that we still have not heard the French interpretation.
We have handed in our authorizations, and the other documents will be handed in soon. Our powers of attorney have been handed in.
Thank you. First, I would like to recall rapidly which of the articles of the statute govern this procedure. I would like to remind you that the statute in Article 20, which was approved by the Security Council, states that the trial chamber shall read the indictment and satisfy itself that the rights of the accused are respected, confirm that the accused understands the indictment, and instruct the accused to enter a plea. In Article 21, there are a series of rights which the accused are entitled to know of in a language which they understand, having to do with the nature and the reasons for the charges brought against them or against individuals. Specifically relating to the initial appearance, that is, this hearing, we look at Rule 62 of the Rules of Procedure and Evidence, which were applied from the statute, which had been voted upon by the Security Council, which says that the trial chamber shall satisfy itself that the right of the accused to counsel is respected, read or have the indictment read to the accused in a language he speaks and understands, and satisfy itself that the accused understands the indictment, and then calls upon the accused to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty on each count. Should the accused fail to do so, enter a plea of not guilty on his behalf. And last, in case of a plea of not guilty, instruct the registrar to set a date for trial, and we will speak about that in a little while. Should there be a guilty plea, instructs the registrar to set a date for the pre-sentencing hearing or any other appropriate dates. These are the rules governing this hearing. I would now like to turn to Mrs. Glumac and to Mr. Kern to ask whether the accused that they are defending have received a copy of the indictment in a language which they understand, that is yours as well, and whether the accused understood what was in them before we read the indictment. First of all, then, Ms. Glumac, would you please answer this question? You who are defending Mr. Skopljak and Mr. KORDIĆ.
Your Honors, copies of the indictment have been handed to the accused, and the accused have understood the same.
Maître Kern.
Mr. Kern.
Your Honors, the accused have received the indictment in their own language, and they have understood the text handed to them.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Please be seated. I will now ask the registrar to read the entire indictment, including the two names that are the object or the subject of proceedings already in progress. Registrar, would you please recall the date of the indictment and then read it, if you like.
You want me to?
This is the indictment, the prosecutor of the tribunal against Dario KORDIĆ, Teofil, also known as Timur Blaškić, Mario Čerkez, Ivan, also known as Ivica Čantić, Pero Skopjak, Zlatko Aleksovski. Indictment. Richard Joe Gelstern, prosecutor of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, pursuant to his authority under Article 18 of the Statute of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, the statute of the tribunal, charges that 1. Serious violations of international humanitarian law took place during the period of May 1992 to May 1993, when the armed forces of the Croatian Defence Council, hereinafter referred to as the HVO, of the Croatian Community of Herceg-Bosna, hereinafter referred to as HZHB, attacked the Muslim civilian population in the towns, villages, and hamlets of the Lashva Valley of central Bosnia, generally and specifically in the municipalities of Vitez and Busovaca, and the civilian population of the nearby city of Zenica in the territory of the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The accused, 2. Dario KORDIĆ was born on 14 December 1960 in Sarajevo in the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina. From at least 1991 until the present, he has been an active and influential member of a Bosnian Croat political party named the Croatian Democratic Union of Bosnia and Herzegovina, hereinafter referred to as the HDZ-BIH. From at least 22 September 1992 until the present, he has been vice president and a member of the presidency of HZHB, and from on or about 10 July 1994, he has been chairman of the HDZ-BIH. 3. Tifo Blaškić, son of Ivo, was born on 2 November 1960 in the village of Brestovsko, municipality of Kišljak, in the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina. He is a career military officer who graduated from the Military Academy in Belgrade in 1983 and formerly served as a captain in the Yugoslav People's Army JNA. At all times material to this indictment, he held the rank of colonel and was the commander of the Central Bosnia Operative Zone of the HVO. Since about August 1993, he has held the rank of general and is the chief of staff of the HVO with his headquarters in Mostar. 4. Mario Čerkez, son of Tugomir, was born on 27 March 1959 in the village of Rijeka, municipality of Vitez, in the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina. His official personal identification number is 270-3959-193612. In 1992, during the formation of the HVO forces in Vitez, he became the commander of the HVO brigade stationed in the municipality of Vitez. He held that position until at least the end of May 1993, and during the HDZBIH/HVO takeover of the municipal functions within Vitez municipality. He is currently residing in Vitez. 5. Ivan Čantić, son of Stipe, was born in 1942 and is married to Marica. He is a chemical engineer and was formerly the technical manager of the Sintovit factory in Vitez. He was mayor of the municipality of Vitez from at least May 1992 and at all times material to this indictment. He held this position during the HDZBIH-HVO takeover of the municipal functions within the Vitez municipality. He currently resides in Vitez. 6. Pero Skopjak, son of Ante, was born on 4 June 1943 in Vitez, in the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina. His official personal identification number is 04069431936110, and he was a graduate of the Faculty of Theology of the Roman Catholic Church. He was formerly the president of the Executive Committee of Vitez HDZ Electoral Assembly and chief of police at the Public Security Station of Vitez Municipality in central Bosnia from at least October 1992 to May 1993. He is now an official in the office of the Vice President of HZHB. 7. Zlatko Aleksovski, son of Tali and Eva, née Stanko, was born on 8 January 1960 in Pakrac municipality in the Republic of Croatia. He completed studies at the Veljko Vlahović Faculty of Political Sciences, Department of Sociology, in Sarajevo on 28 September 1983. From 23 February 1987, he was employed as a counselor at the Zenica Correction House until on or about 29 January 1993, when he left to become commander of the prison facility at Kaunik, near Busovaca. After May 1993, he left Kaunik to become the head of the district HVO Heliodrome prison in Mostar, which was under the administration of the HZHB. Superior authority. 8. Dario KORDIĆ was elected president of the HDZ party in the municipality of Busovaca in 1991. This party was the main Bosnian Croat political party in the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina. On 18 November 1991, he participated in the formation of the HZHB and was a signatory to the decision establishing HZHB in the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina. That Bosnian Croat political entity was proclaimed by the HDZBIH to include the municipalities of Travnik, Vitez, Novi Travnik, Busovaca, and Kiseljak. By at least 10 May 1992, KORDIĆ became the vice president of the HVO in HZHB. By at least 22 May 1992, he became one of 2 vice presidents of HZHB and remained so at all times, material to this indictment. 9. Dario KORDIĆ was, by virtue of his position as a vice president of HZHB, also a member of the presidency, being the legislative body of HZHB. According to Article 7 of the decision on founding the Croatian Community of Herceg-Bosna, dated 3 July 1992, its presidency consists of the president, 2 vice presidents, and the secretary. 10. Dario KORDIČ, by virtue of holding various political positions from time to time, culminating in his positions as vice president of HZHB and the HVO, and by virtue of his political power base in central Bosnia, exerted power, influence, and control over the political and strategic aims and operations of the HVO in the Central Bosnia Operative Zone, one of the 4 HVO military operative zones within HZHB, at all times material to this indictment. 11. Dario KORDIČ demonstrated power, influence, authority, and control on numerous occasions and in numerous ways, including, but not limited to, negotiating ceasefire agreements, issuing orders that were directly or indirectly of a military nature, representing himself as an HVO colonel, dressing in an HVO uniform, having a military operations room in his office in Busovaca, countermanding ceasefire agreements when the terms were not suitable to him, issuing orders for the arrest or release of influential Muslims held prisoner by the HVO, and negotiating the passage of relief convoys or United Nations vehicles through checkpoints in central Bosnia. 12. Teofil Baškić, since the establishment of the HVO on 8 April 1992, was instrumental in the implementation of the structure and functioning of the HVO in the Central Bosnia Operative Zone. From at least May 1992, he was a colonel in the HVO and the commander of the Central Bosnia Operative Zone, and remains so at all times material to this indictment. Teofil Blaškić's authority and duties as a commander are set forth in the Decree on the Armed Forces of the Croatian Community of Herceg-Bosna, dated 17 October 1992. That decree provides inter alia that he is responsible for the combat readiness of the troops under his command, the mobilization of the armed forces and police units, and the authority to appoint commanders. 13. Teofil Blaškić has demonstrated or exercised his control in military matters in a variety of ways, including, but not limited to, negotiating ceasefire agreements, negotiating with United Nations officials, establishing the organizational structures of the armed forces of the HVO, appointing and relieving military commanders, deploying troops, artillery, and other units under his command, issuing orders to municipal HVO headquarters, acting as a liaison with senior Croatian army officials, and controlling external military units operating within his area of command.
14. Mario Čerkez, from at least August 1992, was the commander of the HVO Brigade situated in the municipality of Vitez, and remained so at all times material to this indictment. His position within the HVO meant he came under the command of Teofil Blaškić, the HVO Central Bosnia Operative Zone commander at the time. The Vitez Brigade headquarters was situated in the Hotel Vitez, the same building as Blaškić's headquarters. Mario Čerkez's authority and duties as a commander are set forth in the Decree on the Armed Forces of the Croatian Community of Herceg-Bosna, dated 17th of October 1992, which provides inter alia that he is responsible for the combat readiness of the troops under his command, the mobilization of the armed forces and police units, and the authority to appoint commanders. 15. Mario Čerkez has demonstrated or exercised his control in military matters in a variety of ways, including, but not limited to, negotiating ceasefire agreements with opposing civil and military figures from within the Muslim community, negotiating with United Nations officials, appointing military commanders, issuing orders to deploy troops and other units under his command, and controlling the detention and treatment of detained civilians during times of military conflict. 16. Ivan Šantić was the mayor of the municipality of Vitez from at least May 1992 until May 1993. He represented the Bosnian Croat population of Vitez within the Croatian Democratic Union of Bosnia-Herzegovina. By virtue of his political and official position, he exerted considerable power, influence, authority, and control over the political and strategic military aims of the HVO in the municipality of Vitez. 16. Ivan Šantić has demonstrated or exercised his control over civil and military matters within the Vitez municipality in a variety of ways, including, but not limited to, negotiating ceasefire agreements with opposing civil and military figures from within the Muslim community, negotiating with United Nations officials, controlling the municipal and governmental functions within Vitez municipality, and controlling the detention and treatment of detained civilians during times of military conflict. 18. Pero Skopljak was a president of the Executive Committee of the Croatian Democratic Union of Bosnia-Herzegovina for the municipality of Vitez. From at least October 1992 until May 1993, he was the chief of police in the municipality of Vitez. By virtue of his political and official position, he exerted power, influence, authority, and control over the political and strategic military aims of the HVO in the municipality of Vitez. 19. Pero Skopljak has demonstrated or exercised his control over civil, police, and military matters within the municipality of Vitez in a variety of ways, including, but not limited to, negotiating ceasefire agreements with opposing civil and military figures from within the Muslim community, negotiating with United Nations officials, controlling the municipal and governmental functions, and controlling the detention and treatment of detained civilians during times of military conflict. 20. Zlatko Alekskovski was an official at the Zenica prison from the 23rd of February 1987 until leaving to be the commander of the detention facility in Kaunik, near Busovača, on or about the 29th of January 1993. He was in charge of Kaunik prison and was in a position of superiority to everyone else in the camp. As commander, he met International Committee of the Red Cross, hereinafter referred to as the ICRC, and the European Community Monitoring Mission, hereinafter referred to as ECMM in ex-Yugoslavia, officials, and provided them with lists of detained persons and acknowledged his position of command of the facility and his understanding of the Geneva Conventions in relation to the detention and treatment of prisoners in his charge. 21. Zlatko Alekskovski has demonstrated or exercised his control over the detention facility of Kaunik prison in a variety of ways, including, but not limited to, formal meetings with ICRC and ECMM officials, accepting the custody of arrested persons by HVO units, allowing the unlawful interrogation of detained persons, and allowing them to be used for unlawful forced labor, digging trenches, and human shields. 22. General allegations. 22.1. At all times relevant to this indictment, a state of international armed conflict and partial occupation existed in the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina in the territory of the former Yugoslavia. 22.2. All acts or omissions herein set forth as grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions of 1949, hereinafter grave breaches, recognized by Article 2 of the Statute of the Tribunal, occurred during that international armed conflict and partial occupation. 22.3. In each paragraph charging crimes against humanity, a crime recognized by Article 5 of the Statute of the Tribunal, the alleged acts or omissions were part of a widespread, large-scale, or systematic attack directed against the civilian population, specifically the Bosnian Muslim population of the Lashva Valley region of the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina. 22.4. All of the victims referred to in the charges contained in this indictment were, at all relevant times, persons protected by the Geneva Conventions of 1949. 22.5. All of the accused in this indictment were required to abide by the mandate of the laws and customs governing the conduct of war, including the Geneva Conventions of 1949. 22.6. The general allegations contained in paragraphs 8 through 22.5 are realleged and incorporated into each of the related charges set out below. Charges. 23. Between 1st May 1992 and 31st May 1993, Bosnian Muslims were persecuted on political, racial, and religious grounds throughout the Lashva Valley area. Dario KORDIĆ and Tihofil Blaškić, during those times and throughout the Lashva Valley area, did, by their acts and omissions and in concert with others, commit a crime against humanity by persecuting Bosnian Muslims on political, racial, and religious grounds. They are criminally responsible for the murder and wounding of Muslim civilians or detainees, the attacking and bombarding of undefended towns, villages, and dwellings, deliberate attacks on the civilian population, the unlawful destruction of businesses, homes, personal property, and livestock, the unlawful treatment of detainees, the targeting of political leaders and professionals by murdering them or detaining them in detention facilities for extended periods of time, the plundering of homes and personal property, the transferring or forcing of civilians to move out of the Lashva Valley to predominantly Muslim-populated regions, and the commission of other inhumane acts. Persecution was carried out by one or more of the aforementioned means, some of which are more particularized below. 24. In January and April 1993, HBO forces or their agents, under the direction and control of Dario KORDIĆ and Tihomir Blaškić, planned and executed a systematic campaign of bombarding, attacking, and destroying towns, villages, and hamlets in the Lashva Valley area, or parts thereof, whose inhabitants were predominantly Bosnian Muslims. These communities and their Bosnian Muslim inhabitants were selected and targeted on political, racial, and religious grounds. The attacks on these communities were conducted by HBO forces, which in the Vitez municipality included members of the Vitez Brigade under the direction and control of Mario Čerkez. The Bosnian Muslim communities that were attacked in the Lashva Valley area had few or no Bosnian Herzegovina army troops present in or near the community. Many of the attacks commenced early in the morning when most of the inhabitants were in their homes and asleep. At least 100 defenseless Bosnian Muslim civilians, including women, children, the elderly, and the infirm, were killed, and many others wounded or harmed in their homes, in their yards, while attempting to escape from the HBO attacks or bombardments, or after they had been detained by the HBO. 25. In late April 1993, when the ABH forces were involved in a counter-offensive against the HBO in or near the Lashva Valley area, HBO forces or their agents under the direction and control of Dario KORDIĆ and Tihomir Blaškić bombarded civilians gathering in the central shopping area of Zenica, resulting in the death of at least 17 civilians and the wounding of many others. 26. Between the 1st of January and at least the 31st of May 1993, in the municipalities of Busovača and Vitez, hundreds of Bosnian Muslim civilians that had not escaped from or been killed in HBO attacks were systematically selected and rounded up on political, racial, or religious grounds by HBO forces or their agents under the direction and control of Dario KORDIĆ and Tihomir Blaškić. These Bosnian Muslim civilians, including the many wounded in the attacks, were taken and detained by HBO forces or their agents, some of which included members of the Vitez Brigade, which was under the direction and control of Mario Čerkez. These civilians were interned along with captured Muslim combatants in detention facilities located at diverse locations in the Lashva Valley area. These facilities include, but are not limited to, the Vitez Cinema Complex, the Kaunik Prison near Busovača, the Vitez Veterinary Station, the Dubravica Elementary School, and several Muslim homes in Gačice. 27. These detention facilities were staffed, operated, or controlled by the HBO or their agents under the direction and control of Dario KORDIќ and Tihomir Blaškić. 28. The hundreds of Bosnian Muslim civilians described in paragraph 26 were detained in these facilities for various lengths of time on the basis of political, racial, and religious grounds until they were either killed, transferred, or forced to move to Muslim-dominated areas outside the Lashva Valley area generally, and specifically outside the municipalities of Vitez, Novi Travnik, and Busovača. 29. While detained, many of the Muslim civilians and captured Muslim combatants were subjected by the HBO or their agents under the direction and control of Dario KORDIќ and Tihomir Blaškić to inhumane treatment, including being kept in cramped or overcrowded facilities, being provided with inadequate food or water, being provided with inadequate or no medical treatment for the infirm or wounded, being subjected to physical or psychological abuse and intimidation, being repeatedly forced to dig trenches for the HVO at numerous and diverse locations at or near lines of confrontation between the HVO and the ABH, thereby subjecting such detainees to mental and physical harm, being subjected to use as human shields at diverse locations in the Lashva Valley area in order to protect HVO military installations or troops from forces hostile to the HVO, and some being shot or beaten to death by the HVO. 30. On the 19th of April 1993, Mario Čerkez, having previously controlled the arrest and detention of hundreds of Muslim civilians through his command of HVO units in Vitez, stated that the HVO would kill the 2,200 Muslim civilians detained in Vitez unless pressure was put on the ABH and civilian authorities to stop the ABH counteroffensive in the Vitez area. This threat was reaffirmed on the 20th of April 1993 by Dario KORDIĆ and Ivan Šantić, and they were thus able, through threats, intimidation, and coercion, to force the signing of a document beneficial to the interest of the HVO and potentially detrimental to the interests of the ABH. Thereafter, Mario Čerkez, Pero Skopljak, and Ivan Šantić allowed the continued detention of the Muslim civilian detainees who were under their care and control, the inhumane treatment of the detainees, the use of detained persons for forced labor digging trenches, and the use of detained persons as human shields. During such time of detention, some of them were murdered or otherwise killed. 31. From January 1993 until at least the end of May 1993, Zlatko Alekskovski accepted hundreds of detained Bosnian Muslim civilians from the HVO or their agents into his custody at the detention facilities in Kaunik. The detainees were from a widespread area, including, but not exclusive to, Vitez and Busovača municipalities. Many of the detainees under his control were subjected to inhumane treatment, including, but not limited to, excessive and cruel interrogation, physical and psychological harm, forced labor, digging trenches, in hazardous circumstances, being used as human shields, and some were murdered or otherwise killed. 32. Persecution throughout the Lashva Valley area, involved the systematic and wanton destruction of Bosnian Muslim homes, personal property, livestock, and businesses by the HVO armed forces, police, and their agents, or third parties with their acquiescence under the direction or control of Dario KORDIĆ and Tihofil Blaškić. Between October 1992 and the end of May 1993, Bosnian Muslim property was singled out on the basis of political, racial, and religious grounds and systematically destroyed either before the hostilities commenced or during or after the HVO attacks on the Muslim civilian population in the Lashva Valley area. The effect of this unlawful, excessive, and wanton destruction of hundreds of Bosnian Muslim homes, personal property, and livestock, not justified by military necessity, was to ensure that the inhabitants who had not been killed could not or would not return to their homes and communities in the Lashva Valley area. The towns, villages, and hamlets, or Muslim portions thereof, where extensive destruction occurred, include but are not limited to: Town village, Ahmići, approximate period of destruction, April 1993. Busovača, January 1993 to May 1993. Gačice, April 1993. Kačuni, April 1993. Lončari, April 1993. Nadioci, April 1993. Očenići, April 1993. Pirići, April 1993. Putiš, April 1993. Šantići, April 1993. Sivrino Selo, April 1993. Stari Vitez, April 1993. Večeriska, Donja Večeriska, April 1993. Vitez, December 1992 to May 1993. 33. Beginning in January 1993 and through to May 1993, HVO forces or their agents under the direction or control of Dario KORDIĆ and Tihomir Blaškić on the basis of political, racial and religious grounds unlawfully bombarded the central shopping area of Zenica and systematically attacked hundreds of undefended dwellings or buildings in numerous towns, villages and hamlets in diverse locations in the Lashva Valley area that were owned and many of which were occupied by Bosnian Muslim civilians and were of no military significance at the time of the attack or bombardment, in order to kill, terrorize, or demoralize the Bosnian Muslim population. These incidents resulted in hundreds of Bosnian Muslim civilian casualties in numerous locations, including, but not limited to, location: Ahmići, commencement date 16th of April 1993, 5:30 a.m. Busovača, January 1993 and 26th of April 1993. Gačice, 20th of April 1993, 5:50 a.m. Kačuni, January 1993. Lončari, 17th of April 1993. Nadioci, 16th of April 1993, 5:30 a.m. Očanići, 19th of April 1993. Pirići, 16th of April 1993, 6 a.m. Putiš, 16th of April 1993. Šantići, 16th of April 1993, 5:30 a.m. Sivrino Sela, 16th of April 1993. Stari Vitez, 16th of April 1993, 5:45 a.m. Večeriska, Donja Večeriska, 16th of April 1993, 5:30 a.m. Vitez, 16th of April 1993, 5:15 a.m. Zenica, 19th of April 1993.
4. All events described in paragraphs 22 to 33 were directed against Bosnian Muslim civilians on political, racial, and religious grounds. Individually and collectively, these actions were on such a large scale and widespread basis and implemented in such a systematic fashion that they have effectively destroyed or removed almost the entire Muslim civilian population from those areas of the Lashva Valley where the HVO and the Bosnian Croat administration had taken control. Counts 1 to 3. Crimes against humanity, 35. Dario KORDIĆ and Tihomir Blaškić, between 1 May 1992 and 31 May 1993, individually and in concert with others, planned, instigated, ordered, or otherwise aided and abetted in the planning, preparation, or execution of the following crimes. A. Persecutions of Bosnian Muslims in the Lashva Valley area of the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina on political, racial, and religious grounds. B. Bombardments and attacks which caused the death of over 100 Bosnian civilians in the Lashva Valley area and the city of Zenica in the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina. C. Inhumane acts against Bosnian civilians in the Lashva Valley area and civilians in the central shopping district of the city of Zenica in the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And, or in the alternative, knew or had reason to know that subordinates were about to do the same or had done so, and failed to take the necessary and reasonable measures to prevent such acts or to punish the perpetrators thereof. By these acts and omissions, Dario KORDIĆ and Tihomir Blaškić committed Count 1, a crime against humanity, as recognized by Articles 5H, persecution on political, racial, and religious grounds, 7.1 and 7.3 of the Statute of the Tribunal, as described in paragraphs 23 through 34, which are incorporated in full herein. Count 2, a crime against humanity, as recognized by Articles 5A, murder, 7.1 and 7.3 of the Statute of the Tribunal, as described in paragraphs 24 through 25, which were incorporated in full herein. Count 3, a crime against humanity, as recognized by Articles 5I, Inhumane Acts, 7.1 and 7.3 of the Statute of the Tribunal, as described in paragraphs 23 and 28 through 34, and all references to the wounding or harming of many Bosnian civilians, as set out in paragraphs 24 and 25, all of which are incorporated in full herein. Counts 4 through 7. Grave breaches in violation of the laws or custom of war. Willful killing and wounding of Bosnian Muslim civilians. 36. Dario KORDIĆ, Teofil Blaškić, and Mario Čerkez, between 1 January and 31 May 1993, and as described in paragraphs 24 and 25 of this indictment, both of which are incorporated in full herein, individually and in concert with others, planned, instigated, ordered, or otherwise aided and abetted in the planning, preparation, or execution of the murder of over 100 civilians and the wounding of many others in the Lashva Valley area and in the city of Zenica in the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and, or in the alternative, knew or had reason to know that subordinates were about to do the same or had done so, and failed to take the necessary and reasonable measures to prevent such acts or to punish the perpetrators thereof. By these acts and omissions, Dario KORDIĆ, Teofil Blaškić, and Mario Čerkez committed count 4, a grave breach as recognized by Articles 2A, willful killing, 7.1 and 7.3 of the Statute of the Tribunal. Count 5, a grave breach as recognized by Articles 2C, willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health, 7.1 and 7.3 of the Statute of the Tribunal. Count 6, a violation of the laws or customs of war, as recognized by Articles 3, deliberate attack on the civilian population and individual civilians, 7.1 and 7.3 of the Statute of the Tribunal. Count 7, a violation of the laws or customs of war, recognized by Articles 3, 7.1 and 7.3 of the Statute of the Tribunal and Article 3.1a, murder, of the Geneva Conventions of 1949. Counts 8 through 10, grave breaches and violations of the laws or customs of war. Unlawful treatment of Bosnian Muslim detainees. 37, Dario KORDIĆ, Teofil Blaškić, Mario Čerkez, Ivan Šantić, Pero Skopjak, and Zlatko Aleksovski, between 1 January and 31 May 1993, and as otherwise described in paragraphs 23 and 26 through 31 of this indictment, all of which are incorporated in full herein, individually and in concert with others, planned, instigated, ordered, or otherwise abetted and abetted in the planning, preparation, or execution of the unlawful treatment of Bosnian Muslim detainees in the Lashva Valley area of the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and, or in the alternative, knew or had reason to know that subordinates were about to do the same or had done so, and failed to take the necessary and reasonable measures to prevent such acts or to punish the perpetrators thereof. By these acts and omissions, Dario KORDIČ, Teofil Blaškić, Mario Čerkez, Ivan Šantić, Pero Skopjak, and Zlatko Aleksovski committed count 8, a grave breach as recognized by Articles 2b, inhumane treatment, 7.1 and 7.3 of the Statute of the Tribunal. Count 9, a grave breach recognized by Article 2c, willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health, and Articles 7.1 and 7.3 of the Statute of the Tribunal. Count 10, a violation of the laws or customs of war, outrages upon the personal dignity, as recognized by Articles 3, 7.1 and 7.3 of the Statute of the Tribunal. Counts 11 through 13, grave breach and violations of the laws or customs of war, attacks, bombardments, and destruction of civilian property. 38, Dario KORDIČ, Teofil Blaškić, and Mario Čerkez, between 1 January and 31 May 1993, and otherwise as described in paragraphs 23 through 25 and 32 and 33 of this indictment, all of which are incorporated in full herein, individually and in concert with others, planned, instigated, ordered, or otherwise aided and abetted in the planning, preparation, or execution of the unlawful attacking, bombarding, and destruction of Bosnian Muslim dwellings, businesses, buildings, personal property, and livestock in the Lashva Valley area of the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and or in the alternative knew or had reason to know that subordinates were about to do the same or had done so, and failed to take the necessary and reasonable measures to prevent such acts or to punish the perpetrators thereof. By these acts and omissions, Dario KORDIČ, Teofil Blaškić, and Mario Čerkez committed count 11, a grave breach as recognized by Articles 2d, extensive destruction of property, 7.1 and 7.3 of the Statute of the Tribunal. Count 12, a violation of the laws or customs of war, wanton destruction of dwellings or other installations that are used only by the civilian population, including places of religious worship, as recognized by Articles 3, 7.1, and 7.3 of the Statute of the Tribunal. Count 13, a violation of the laws or customs of war, attacks on dwellings or other installations that are used only by the civilian population, including places of religious worship, as recognized by Articles 3, 7.1, and 7.3 of the Statute of the Tribunal. Signed, Richard Goldstone, Prosecutor, November 1995, The Hague, the Netherlands. Thank you. I would now like to turn to the defense attorneys and to their accused and state that this indictment was read in its entirety, and as you have noted, has two other names in it, Teofil Blaškić and Zlatko Alefsovski. The reason for this is, as you know, Teofil Blaškić and Mr. Zlatko Alefsovski are being tried in separate procedures. Teofil Blaškić's trial began about 3 or 4 months ago, and Zlatko Alefsovski's will begin shortly. This is the reason for that. I first wanted to tell you this and to note it because the judges want very much that the indictment be read exactly as it was drafted in November of 1995 against the 4 accused. I asked the defense attorneys whether they have understood exactly what I have just said, and I suppose that your clients have also understood that. Is that right? Now, I would like to turn to each of the accused and ask him whether he pleads guilty or not guilty to each of the counts in the entire indictment which has just been read. I will first ask Mr. Dario KORDIĆ to rise. Mr. KORDIĆ, you, of course, heard the indictment read in the language which is your own. You understood all the facts. Would you answer yes or no? Or if you have anything that you're not sure about, something which you did not understand, let me know, please.
Your Honors, ladies and gentlemen, I have fully understood the indictment. And you said that I heard it in my language. That is not quite correct, because it was not in Croatian. I heard it more in Serbian. So that is the comment I have to make.
This comment, which was not the first time that we have heard and has already been settled here, will be noted in the transcript for this hearing. Mr. KORDIĆ, I'm going to recall each of the counts which involves you. There are 13 which affect you. I will simply give the name and ask you to answer clearly whether or not you plead guilty. Count number 1, crime against humanity, persecution for political, racial, and religious reasons. Article 5H of the tribunal. Guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
2.
Count 2, a crime against humanity, murder, Article 5A of the statute.
Not guilty.
Chef 3.
Count 3, a crime against humanity, inhumane acts, Article 5I of the statute.
Not guilty.
Chef 4. Infraction grave.
Count 4, grave breach, willful killing, Article 2A of the statute.
Not guilty.
Chef 5.
Count 5, grave breach, willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health, Article 2C of the statute.
Not guilty.
Chef 6.
Count 6, violation of the laws or customs of war, deliberate attack on the civilian population and individual civilians, Article 3 of the statute.
Also not guilty.
Chef 7.
Count 7, a violation of the laws or customs of war, murder, Article 3 of the statute.
Not guilty.
Je préférerais que vous disiez.
I would prefer that you state whether you plead guilty or not. The interpretation said that you do not feel guilty. In my language, at least, there was somewhat of a difference there. I would like you to state I plead guilty or I plead not guilty, if you don't mind. Count 8, grave breach, inhumane treatment, Article 2B of the statute.
Izjašnjavam se dakle da
I plead not guilty.
izjašnjavam se da nisam kriv.
I plead not guilty.
Chef 9.
Count 9, grave breach, willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health. Article 2C of the statute.
Izjašnjavam se nisam.
I plead not guilty.
10.
Count 10, violation of the laws or customs of war, outrages upon the personal dignity, Article 3 of the statute.
Izjašnjavam se.
I plead not guilty.
Chef 11.
Count 11, grave breach, extensive destruction of property, Article 2D of the statute.
Izjašnjavam se.
I plead not guilty.
Count 12, violation of the laws or customs of war, wanton destruction of dwellings or other installations used only by the civilian population, including places of religious worship, Article 3 of the statute.
Izjašnjavam se.
I plead not guilty.
13.
Count 13, violation of the laws or customs of war, attacks on dwellings or other installations used only by the civilian population, including places of religious worship, Article 3 of the statute.
I plead not guilty.
Pouvez vous asseoir.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Točke optužbe.
Therefore, I plead not guilty on all counts.
Bien, je le.
Then this is the statement which has been recorded. Did you understand in the language which you received, which you seemed to be challenging, at least the linguistic connotation of it, at least did you understand the indictment?
Monsieur KORDIĆ.
Mr. KORDIĆ.
U cijelosti.
I have understood it completely, but I said that I would have preferred to have heard it in the Croatian language.
Thank you. We will now ask Mr. Mario Čerkez to rise. Please answer to each of the counts that were brought against you in the indictment which has just been read to you. Answer whether you plead guilty or not guilty. Count 4, willful killing, Article 2A of the statute.
I plead not guilty.
Chef 5.
Count 5, grave breach, willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health, Article 2C of the statute.
I plead not guilty.
Chef 6.
Count 6, violation of the laws or customs of war, deliberate attack on the civilian population and individual civilians, Article 3 of the statute of the tribunal.
I plead not guilty.
D'accusation 7.
Count 7, violation of the laws or customs of war, murder, Article 3 of the statute.
I plead not guilty.
Accusation 8.
Count 8, grave breach, inhumane treatment, Article 2B of the statute.
I plead not guilty.
Accusation.
Count 9, grave breach, willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health, Article 2C of the statute.
I plead not guilty.
Chef 10. Violation.
Count 10, violation of the laws or customs of war, outrages upon the personal dignity, Article 3 of the statute.
I plead not guilty.
Accusation.
Count 11, grave breach, extensive destruction of property, Article 2D of the statute.
I plead not guilty.
Accusation 12.
Count 12, violation of the laws or customs of war. In this case, wanton destruction of dwellings or other installations used only by the civilian population, including places of religious worship, Article 3 of the statute.
I plead not guilty.
Chef d'accusation.
Count 13, violation of the laws or customs of war, attacks on dwellings or other installations used only by the civilian population, including places of religious worship, Article 3 of the statute.
I plead not guilty.
Vous remercie.
Thank you. Therefore, you are pleading not guilty to all of the counts which were brought against you?
Yes, I plead not guilty on all counts of the indictment.
I have noted that. Have you also understood the indictment, Mr. Čerkez? Did you understand it?
Yes, I completely understood the indictment, and I plead not guilty on all counts of the indictment.
ČERKEZ.
Thank you, Mr. Čerkez. Then it will be noted as that, and you may be seated. I would like to call Mr. Ivan Šantić. You are cited in this indictment. First, I would like to ask you whether you understood the indictment.
Yes, I understood them as they were written.
This is how it will be noted in the transcript. You understood what was written. Mr. Šantić, you are covered by 3 counts in this indictment. 8, grave breach, inhumane treatment. Article 2B of the statute, do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Accusation 9.
Count 9, grave breach, willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health. Article 2C of the statute.
Not guilty.
Accusation 10.
Count 10, violation of the laws or customs of war, outrages upon personal dignity, Article 3 of the statute.
Not guilty.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Šantić. You may be seated. It will be noted in that way in the transcript of this hearing that on the 3 counts which concern you, that is 8, 9, and 10, you plead non-guilty. Mr. Peroskopiak, would you rise, please? First, I ask you whether you heard and understood the indictment as it was read in its entirety.
Yes, I have.
You are covered by 3 counts in this indictment, Mr. Kopiak, 8, 9, and 10. As for count 8, grave breach, inhumane treatment, Article 2B of the statute, do you plead guilty or not guilty?
I plead absolutely not guilty.
Count 9, grave breach, willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health, Article 2C of the statute, do you plead guilty or not guilty?
I plead absolutely not guilty.
Chef d'accusation.
Count 10, violation of the laws or customs of war, outrages upon personal dignity, Article 3 of the statute.
I plead absolutely not guilty.
You may be seated, Mr. Skopiak.
Monsieur le greffier.
Turning to the register, would you please note all of the pleas, all of which were pleas of not guilty. I would now go into the last part of this hearing, which is the organization of the trial chamber's work and the possible setting for a date for the trial. First, turning to the prosecutor and remind him of his obligation, which according to 66 of the rules is his, that he must give a copy of all make available to the defense as soon as practical after the initial appearance copies of the supporting material which accompanied the indictment when confirmation was sought, as well as all prior statements obtained by the article. You must understand now, Mr. Prosecutor, that for the tribunal has been existing for several years now, and in the light of the case law which the tribunal has been able to render in a number of cases which arose out of various preliminary comments and motions of the different accused. Mr. Prosecutor, have any points that you would like to comment on here?
Mr. President, we understand our obligations. We are in the process of preparing those materials for counsel, and I hope to engage counsel in discussions in respect of some of those materials shortly. Thank you.
Voilà, vous ne pouvez pas, je suppose.
I suppose that you could not give the defense a time frame for when you will give it, communicate this to them.
I think we can communicate those materials to the defense within 2 weeks.
Maître Glum.
Mrs. Glumatz and Mr. Kern, did you hear that within 2 weeks you will be entitled to have all of the documents that were attached to the indictment and the confirmation request which was presented to my colleague for the indictment which you've just heard, as well as the statements which were gathered? You understood things in that manner, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. And we hope that this applies to the implementation of Rules 66A and that we will receive all the supporting material and statements required under that rule. I have also understood it. I think that the deadline is a reasonable one, and we hope it will be observed.
Mr. Kern, the tribunal is here to be sure that these time frames are respected. I would like to recall all parties and to defense and to the prosecution that you have 60 days from today, 8 October 1997, the day of the initial hearing, to file any preliminary motions which are permitted under 72 and 73 of the Rules of Procedure and Evidence. The prosecutor is familiar with these provisions. Perhaps the defense attorneys are less so. I therefore ask you to look at the text involved, which refer to 60 days, but which can be extended by the trial chamber if it so decides, but only when in a intra-party hearing. Before we leave, we must set up a date for a status conference in order to look at the status of the work and in order to settle any problems before we set a date for the trial. I must also point out to you that there are a certain number of things and questions which I feel responsible and must tell you. We, for the time being, have only one courtroom. This is a problem which the tribunal is confronted with and which must be settled during 1998. I do not know whether there will be any questions any questions of possible separation of trials. Only you can make those requests or not make any. I would tell you that the composition of the trial chamber may change. You know that the tribunal is finishing its first mandate given to it by the Security Council on the 17th of November. After that date, the composition of the trial will change for 6 of us judges. Therefore, there may be a modification in the trial chamber's composition. I simply wanted to point this out to you. If there are any other questions, Mrs. Glumatz, Mr. Kern, have you any comments that you would like to make about this hearing?
Your Honors, for the present, I have no further comments to make, and until we receive the supporting material, we cannot make any further submissions.
Mr. Kern?
Mr. Kern, we have understood our rights, and we will avail ourselves of those rights when we receive all the supporting material attached to the indictment.
Turning to the prosecutor, have you any comments that you would like to make as to the conduct of the work? I say this for the defense as well. Access to the trial chamber is easy. Mr. Olivier Fourmi is the legal officer in this trial chamber, through whom you can communicate with anything that you like in order to speak with the judges or to communicate with them. Mr. Harmon, have you any additional comments you would like to make?
Not, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. I now turn to my colleagues. Mr. Kirby-White, have you any comments you would like to make? Judge Abudin, have you any comments that you would like to make?
At this stage.
Monsieur le greffier.
Turning to the registrar, are we in a position now to set a trial date? As things stand now, I believe this would be difficult, but I'd like to have your opinion in order to comply with all the provisions of the text which govern our work. No, it would be difficult to give you a trial date now, to suggest a trial date to you now. Thank you, Registrar. If there are no other comments, the hearing is adjourned and will resume for a status conference.
Nice, vir jou volle